Hi, I'm Tomasz Poszetek, and in this video I would like to show you some more advanced techniques to work with Power Automate approval processes, with approval tasks. So basically, just a small disclaimer before I continue, whatever I'm going to showcase you today in this video does actually require a premium Power Automate per user plan. So if you're planning, or if you'd like to follow me with these steps that I will be showing, or if you'd like to implement something similar in your premises, in your organization, then simply be aware that at least your account, if not other members, other participants of the processes, will require the Power Automate per user plan. And this is the end of the disclaimer. All right. So right now I would like to focus on some advanced scenarios that are not possible actually to be executed or accomplished in Power Automate straight out of box. Because as we know, the out of box approvals can only allow us to assign a task to a single user or to multiple users, then wait for one approval or for multiple approvals, for all approvals. And as well, we can assign tasks with custom responses or with the basic approve reject. And actually, they can wait no longer than 30 days. So I am not going to focus on how to extend this waiting time. I will make a separate video about that. I will now just focus on the features that are not present in out-of-box approval tasks, but are really highly desired by business usually. And by that I mean approval or completing approval once a specific number of responses is met. So for example, we would like to complete approval process after 50% of respondees answers or completes their tasks. Or a second one, to manually complete approval process at any time. Or to be able to approve on behalf of anyone actually. Because some people might be out of office or whatever. And then when speaking about out of office, to be able to reassign a task to anyone else, even if the person who reassigns is not actually the assignee, so that we could unlock workflows which are waiting for someone's approval, and that person is on holidays or on a sick leave. And this is also a very important topic in terms of substitutions, right? So if you'd like to create a substitution process, workflow in our premises, so that if a person is out of office, their tasks are reassigned to someone else, to their substitute, then there is no such feature out of box. Also, if you would like to cancel a workflow approval at any time. And so with that said, those are scenarios which are very often being mentioned by the business, and that you really cannot build them or create them or simply configure them to be running out of box. And now, in my previous video that you can find on my channel, I've mentioned what is the architecture behind approvals, so that it all works on Dataverse, and that all data behind approvals is stored in Dataverse. And also, I mentioned about the security roles. So now, all these scenarios I've mentioned can be accomplished by building a custom solutions on top of Dataverse and by manipulating the raw data behind approval tasks that is stored in Dataverse. And now, what you'll need to do that is at least the approval admin security role, which has a full access to all the tables which are taking part in approvals. And now when speaking about the tables taking part in approvals, what you can learn from the previous video is as well that there are 8 of them, although there are really 3 major ones are approvals, where Power Automate stores the header of an approval, like the title, description, who created it, if notifications should be sent, if to allow reassignment, and what are the possible outcomes. Then approval requests, so a table where every single task generated during the approval process is stored, because if you assign a single task to like 10 assignees, you will have 10 entries in approval requests. And there you can find to whom the task is assigned. And basically that's the most important information, right? And lastly, the third most important table is approval responses, where Power Automate stores stores information about every single completed task. So whenever a task is completed, there you will find who completed it, when it was completed, with what outcome, and if there were any comments, what were the comments. There is also a fourth very important table, although not that much as the three I have mentioned before, that is called flow approvals. Now, this table is used to store information about every approvals related action in any workflow created on that environment. So in that table, you will find a separate or single entry for each running instance of an approval and for each action related to approvals used in that workflow. So if you use start an approval and then wait an approval, you will find two entries for that specific instance for that specific workflow in that table. If you're gonna use just start and wait for an approval action, then you will find a single entry per an instance in that table. Now, this table has as well one more very, very important information. It also contains a column called flow notification URI that I mentioned as well in a previous video. Now, this URI is nothing different to what we already know from our workflows that are being triggered via the HTTP request. So it's just an URL that triggers a workflow through HTTP request. And the purpose of this URI, of this notification URI, is that once it is called, once the request is posted to that URI, then the workflow that is waiting for an approval to be completed actually is resumed. So now I don't have to mention you why this is so important, but I'll try to explain. Well, basically, whenever you make a change to approvals, like when you create an approval, when you complete an approval, when you cancel it or when you reassign it, there are specific information changed and being written to these three tables I've mentioned. So approvals, approvals requests, and approvals responses. Especially when speaking about completion of approval or its cancellation, we would expect that if we do the same changes on the raw data in Dataverse, the workflow that is pending the approval is going to be resumed, but it won't. So no matter how hard and how much and how accurate changes you will make in those three tables, the workflows which are waiting for an approval will be not resumed until you make a call to that notification URI. So that you actually need to perform all those custom activities in two steps. First, you need to create or make all the changes on the Dataverse and then make a post notification URI. Now, one important thing about this notification URI is that if you do use a request body that is in the same schema as the one that actually approvals are using, then you will simply receive all the values sent to the flow as a dynamic values. However, you can put there any kind of JSON of your choice, but then it will be just sent as a JSON, so you'll need to use the parse JSON action to actually be able to grab data out of that body, that response body, as a dynamic values. So that is a thing. I will just show you that in a moment when doing demos. Now, one more important thing around approvals in Power Automate is that there are like 4 different models. Once you navigate to a table called approvals, you will find a column called approval model. And so there are like 2 models for basic approvals, so those standard ones, and 2 models for custom approvals. In each group of these models, you will find a model for single response completes a workflow, or all responses required to complete the workflow. And so you can find a model called MSDYN Flow Basic Approval Model, which is the standard approval with approve and reject outcomes, waiting only for the first response, and MSDYN Flow Await All Approval Model. This model is waiting for all responses, again, only with approve and reject. And here is a tip, or maybe a thing that you have to be aware of. So this MSDYN Await All Approval Model waits actually for all approvers unless anyone from the approvers marks their response as reject. So the first rejection actually completes the approval process with the reject outcome. Now, if you decide to choose custom outcomes and then to choose MSDYN Flow Action Approval Model, which is waiting for the first response using the custom outcomes, then you'll just have to wait for the first response. However, if you decide to use MSDYN Flow Await All Action Approval Model, which is the custom model waiting for all responses, then actually in that case, the workflow is going to wait for all responses, even if the custom responses are going to be approved and reject the same as in the standard model. But in the end, it is really going to wait until, for example, 10 of respondees, 10 of assignees completes their tasks. And what is also important, the difference between this custom waiting for all and standard waiting for all. With standard, you'll always get either approve or reject as a result of the approval process. In the custom waiting for all, the response are going to be all single outcomes from every single task concatenated using using colon, and this will be sent as a result of the approval process. So for example, if you have two assignees and as a responses you can choose okay and not okay, then if one chooses okay, the other one not okay, the result of approval is going to be okay, comma, not okay. And then you need to create a business logic that will handle such a scenario to decide how this should be actually handled then. All right, so that having said, let me just jump into the demos and show you some cool things I've been working on and created. So the first thing I want to show you is the workflow that is called, or that is used for checking and setting substitutions. So then again, imagine you are in the situation where one of your employees is on a holidays and the workflow is pending their approval, and well, they're just stuck. And you cannot reassign them because, well, you can't sign into the out of office employee account. So it's not like there is nothing you can do. But if you do have this premium license, you can actually navigate to Dataverse and even manually reassign the task from them to someone else. Or you can do as I did, so to create a workflow that is triggered like every day and is checking substitutions. Now what it's doing? Well, I do have a table here that is called substitutions. And this table has like 4 most important columns. The first column is called substitute. So the person who is going to be the substitute for someone who is out of office. Second one is substitute for, so the name of the person who is out of office. Next, the substitution from, so when should this substitution take place? And substitution to, so what time it should end. And now what the workflow actually is doing is first getting all the substitutions that are active for the given moment, so where the UTC now is between the start and end. And then for each such substitution is actually getting all the approvers who has active tasks during, currently. So it's just trying to get all the tasks assigned to the person who is indicated as a substitute for and who has active tasks. And then for each such task, first, it is marking that task as inactive, right? Inactive with the status reason reassign. So this is the first step when doing reassignment, working directly on Dataverse. And once this task is set as inactive, the second step is to create a new workflow task that is assigned to the person who is this substitute. And that has this information, this lookup to reassign from set to the GUID of that task that has been set as inactive. So let me show you how it works. First, I do have a workflow that is called assign lots of tasks. And the purpose of this workflow is quite obvious, right? It's just generating workflow tasks. But I'll just use it to show you how this reassignment works. So let's imagine I have a workflow task assigned to 3 employees, like John Researcher, Stefan, and Marta. I'll just call it maybe test out of 4, right? So now just trigger it manually, right? And run. Done. So then once I navigate to my approvals, right? So it has assigned tasks and now it's waiting for approval. If I navigate to my workflow tasks, you can see that there is no task assigned to me, which is out of 3 or something. I just don't remember. However, now, if I go to that workflow and I will trigger it, it will reassign those tasks that are currently assigned to Stefan. There will be like either 1 or maybe 2 to myself. So let me show you now after this workflow is run. It's quite fast. And you can really have something similar that is being triggered like every day before working hours. And obviously you can think about the vice versa scenario, where the workflow is not only reassigning tasks to the substitute, but then after the substitution period is over, to reassign them back from the substitute to the person who was out of office in the first place. So basically, it has found just one entry because there is just one valid substitution, and then it found only one task. And as you can see, the task that was found has been marked as inactive because it was reassigned. And then there is a second task created assigned to myself. So it all went fine. And then once I navigate back here to approvals and I refresh that view, I should be able to see that there is a new request assigned to myself. Right? And there it is, the test auto approval number 4. And that is so simple. And then just imagine you can create such a workflow yourself and have it running every day. And this way to handle that one of the most important issues that companies are facing. So what to do if someone is out of office? That one is automatic. However, it is as well possible to make it really manual, like manual reassign tasks. And that I will show you in a moment. Because right now I want to showcase you a second scenario. For that, I will just copy this approval test name. And then the second thing I want to show you is a flow that is called complete approval after specific percentage of responses. So this is the second very important scenario that actually was possible in SharePoint Designer. I mean, the SharePoint workflows back then, you were able to define after how many approvals or how, like, what percentage of responses the approval process should be completed. It is not possible in Power Automate, although, again, using raw data from Dataverse, we can create such a solution ourselves. So I have here this complete approval workflow that is going to automatically complete approval process after a specific percentage of responses is made. To support this workflow, I again have my custom table. And it's a very easy table. It just contains 2 custom columns. The first one is the flow ID, so the GUI to the flow or the approval process. And the second one is called the approvals limit, which is actually the whole number, which is indicating the percentage of responses that should be met to complete the workflow task. And here again, I do have opened this table in Excel sheet. So right here, I do have like 2 entries. And in here, I'll just enter the third one. Sorry. First, I need to find the flow GUI. So first, I need to navigate to approvals table. Again, that can as well be automated. So for example, you are using the start or assign tasks, start approval process, right? Where you're assigning tasks. And then you're grabbing the approval ID. Then you're making an entry in such a table. And only then you are using the action that is called wait for an approval. So between assigning a task and then waiting for approval, you are storing information about this workflow task in that table. And then that second workflow is simply monitoring the approval responses table. And then once number of responses for this specific approval process hits or reaches the number, the percentage that is defined, then the workflow is going to be resumed. So right now I need to find that entry related to this new approval process. It's not on the first. Oh, there it is. Awesome. So here it is. It is still waiting for approval. I need to grab its ID. And then let's go back to Excel sheet. And I will as well make this 50% of approval, or even I can make it 60 because I have like only 3 tasks assigned in that approval process. So if 2 out of 3 approves, then it's gonna be 66%, right? and 6666667. Right, so now the data is being published. It is published. Awesome. So now let me show you what is going to happen in that workflow, in this workflow, once I complete my task. So this is going to be the first task where I obviously need to have at least 2 completed. All right, then confirm. And so this task is now completed. Once I go back here and refresh this, there is one run 2 seconds ago. Cool, right? So now let me briefly describe you what this workflow is doing. So first, it is being triggered whenever a new entry in approval responses is made, right? And so once this entry is made, the workflow is triggered. Then it's getting the quota for this specific approval process, because in approval responses, there is also a GUID for an approval. Also, it's getting a list of all generated tasks in that approval process which are still active, and as well the related approval record itself. And after it obtained all this information, it is then as well gathering other responses, if any other responses were made during that approval process. And once that is done, it is calculating the percentage of approved versus all. So it's simply making a division by how many were completed by how many were generated. And then it's multiplying that by 100%. So in the end, it's checking if 33.3333 is more or equal than 60. Well, in this case, no, so the workflow ends its operation. All right, so now what's going to happen if I assign or if I complete the second task? Well, I will show you that using the custom application I have built to help me handle all the approval scenarios. So that's an application that I call the Power Automate Task Management Tool. And now once I refresh this list of all generated approval processes or all created approval processes in a specific environment, I will see now, or I will have now the list of all tasks and all processes that are pending or were created in my environment. And so one of them is this test auto approval process 4, which we are now working on, and in which, as you remember, there was a task assigned to Stefan Kowalski, which was reassigned on that specific date. Right? It was reassigned to myself. So I can have this icon here. I can see like when it was reassigned. I see it was assigned to myself because it was assigned on the same date when that one was reassigned. I can as well see the status, the outcomes for those specific tasks. But I will deeper into application in a moment. What I want to do now is to simply navigate to, for example, John Researcher's task, and on his behalf to approve his task. So as said, we have like 3 pending tasks. Once I complete this one, you will notice that it's going to be like marked as approved. However, the whole process here in the application is not yet approved because the application itself is not working with a table. However, the workflow that I showed you, which is here, once I refresh it, actually does work or is connected to the whole approval process. So what it has done right now is that after getting all this information about pending tasks, generated tasks, and so on, it is now checking if the required limit was met. Now it's true because 66% is more than 60. And so what it's doing right now is first creating the response body or pieces of the response body, because the whole response body is quite a large thing. I'll just show you in a moment. Then it's getting the flow approval record, so the one that contains the URL, so this flow approval URI, flow notification URI, sorry. Then is making the approval as completed, so that all the pending tasks at any of the employees are just disappearing, so that they cannot complete them anymore, because it doesn't make sense to show them tasks which are not related to any active approval process, right? So this is what is happening once an approval is completed. And then I put here some additional compose actions because I just wanted to show you what is actually being sent. So that is the request body, which is going to be the response body from the approval action. As you can see, there is like a table of all single responses. And then there is a section called response summary where you have like a concatenated long string that describes you who has approved, what was the outcome, and it's also concatenated through all given responses, and then some general information about the approval itself. So when it was completed, what was the general outcome, the title, the details of the approval, and so on and so on. And this is actually the expected schema. So now once I navigate back here to this workflow, yeah, it timed out. So let me just go back to the list of tasks, a list of instances. And you can see that this instance that I have just triggered at the beginning of the demo is now completed, right? So once I navigate back to this workflow and I open the start and wait for approval action, I can see that it contains all this information, all the information that I have sent to it from that workflow, right? For example, the completion date, 3 p.m. I mean 41 minutes past 3, and here is as well like 41 minutes past 3, right? So just to show you, this is the same approval. And as said, because the response body or the request body is matching the schema, the JSON schema that this action is awaiting, therefore all this information that was possible to like extract is returned as the valid dynamic values. Awesome, right? Okay, so I have like covered now two very major, very important scenarios. So the reassignments and automatic completion of the approval process once a specific percentage of responses is met. And then let me just jump over to my application and to show you some more cool features that you can actually handle with only working directly on Dataverse. One more thing, once I now hit the refresh button, you will notice that this test auto approval process is going to be marked as completed once those merging ends are gone. Right. So as said, now this auto approval process is now completed. Now there is a second approval process that is still pending. It was triggered like 43 minutes past 3, so just an hour before our demo or my demo. And here I as well have like a similar situation. There was the same action. So I have 3 tasks, active, 1 inactive because it was reassigned from Stefan because his substitution is active. And like for some reason, I just don't know what to do with that workflow. Maybe other participants are just out of office. Maybe I just don't need the workflow, the response anymore. And I just want to cancel this approval. And let's for a moment assume that this approval process was not triggered by myself, even though there is my image here, but by someone else, so that I don't have an access to this approval process and I can't cancel it directly from the Power Automate UI. But because that one is still pending, it's not marked as approved or rejected or with any other response, I am still able to cancel it. So I'll just hit to cancel it. And note, here I don't have because I have completed, but what I can do is to go to send, and it's not in here anymore, this test demo 3, right? This test auto approval 3 is not in here anymore. And that is because it has been already cancelled. So once I navigate to history, I can see that this test auto approval 3 is actually marked as cancelled, right? So then if I go back to my application, I as well see, just photos are gone, but I can as well see that this approval process is now cancelled, right? So actually there is nothing I can do about it. No more responses are needed. So that's another example of what you can do directly working on Dataverse. Plus, because it was cancelled, once I navigate to that runs history, this workflow should as well be now completed. So that's here. And let me just refresh. But it's still running. Possibly that is because I have I've forgotten to actually put the call to that flow notification URI in for that scenario. But that's not a problem. So let's do it manually via Postman. I will show you how. So we're looking for now for test approval tree. So for this one, it is in here. You see it is now cancelled, right? So it is cancelled. It is correct information, so it has been cancelled. So the second thing that we should do is to navigate back to the flow approval table and then find the flow notification URI for that GUID. All right, it's not here. Maybe it will be somewhere lower. Let's see. Again, lower. Still not. Then maybe on the last page. Right. Okay, there it is. So here is the entry for that specific instance. And here you can find this flow notification URI value. Now what you have to do is to simply open the Postman, paste this flow notification URI here in the request URL. And then if you do have like a prepared request body, which looks just like that, right? So as said, you have this responses table, which every single response that was made during the approval process, you have this summary, which is just a concatenated string of all the responses, and then some details. So in case of approval cancelled, the outcome is not approved. Outcome is just cancelled. So I'm not going to change any of those other information because it's really not necessary. Once I hit to submit, you will notice that the workflow is going to actually end. Maybe I'll just open it in the second page here, second window. So let's go to that workflow. And that the outcome is going to be cancelled or cancel. Right, so send. It's all okay, status 200, and the workflow is now resumed, right? So the workflow runs successfully. The action I was waiting for an approval has as well completed, and the outcome is cancelled or cancel. So this is what I forgot actually to implement in my application. Although, as said, you can really easily trigger this workflow to be resumed just using Postman. All right, so that was like a third scenario that you can really cancel the workflow at any time that you really need, whenever you need. So let me just scroll down to an even different approval. So here is an approval that is as well waiting for all assignees, right? So this icon here is telling me that it's waiting for all assignees to approve. And actually in this case, the approval response is waiting for, it is our customs. So it's okay and not okay. So in this case, I'll just show you how it's gonna look like once this approval process is completed. So first, John is going to complete his task. And then I'm going to complete my task. And I will just call to no, not okay, and complete. And so in this case, we have like two responses. We have okay and not okay, plus because this workflow was waiting for all responses from and I'm having custom outcomes, you will notice that once this tile here is refreshed, it should just happen in a moment, right? it is showing me now both the outcomes. Like if there were more assignees, there would be more outcomes present as well. Each like let's say enumerated after the comma. And as well, if I go back for a moment to that workflow that was waiting, it was, I think, that workflow here. Then you will notice as well that it has been completed. No, this is not that workflow. So maybe this was that workflow. Hopefully. Right? This is the workflow. So as you can see, the outcome of this workflow is now okay, not okay. And this is now up to you how to handle such a scenario. And now I'll just make one last resubmit, because I want this workflow again to be submitted having the basic approval model, so the approve and reject only. Because I as well wanted to show you the other scenario. So if, for example, one assignee approves and then other rejects, then the whole approval process is going actually to end up again with a reject response. Right, so there is again this test auto approval assigned to me. And here I'm going to actually show you two things. So first, I want to, for example, reassign from Marta to myself. So I'm going to use this reassign option. Note that this is only happening for those workflow tasks which are having this reassign label on. Because once you're assigning a workflow task, and you go under advanced, there are two flags. First one, element notifications, which is when off, then the workflow is sending no emails to assignees. And the second one, enable reassignment. So if I say to no, and now I change it to test auto approval 5, and again run it, then I'll just show you what is going to happen inside the application for such a scenario. All right. So I'm now back, and I want to reassign from Marta to myself. So here again, I have the information that the workflow task was reassigned from Marta on that hour to myself on that hour. And now let's say Stefan or maybe I will approve my task. But then John is going actually to reject. And so in this scenario, what is happening now is actually the fact, this scenario that the first person who rejects completes the approval process, because John now rejected, the whole process is as well going to be rejected. And you will notice that in a moment, this tile here is going to be displayed with the rejection icon. Right? So there is the reject icon. Now I'll just refresh the list, because there should be now a new as well approval process. And just the final step, so that just wanted to show you that this application, this solution is as well following the configuration of approval tasks. So if that specific workflow task cannot be reassigned, then it simply cannot be reassigned. Right? So in here now we have again 3 tasks. And then if I like to reassign from John, sorry, there is no such an option. This task cannot be reassigned. But, Stefan. But Stefan can simply reject. And this way to complete the whole approval process. And once I navigate back to this workflow, it should be resumed right in a moment. And so again, as you can see, there is just one responder, so the Stefan Kowalski, and the outcome is reject. Okay, and with that longer set of demos, I really hope that I inspired you to look at the Dataverse, to look at the raw data behind approvals, and to start really creating these missing scenarios, missing functionalities to handle these very much required by business scenarios on your own, because it's not really difficult. You just need to remember a couple of principles and to know what data is being changed in which tables for the specific, in the specific scenarios. And then actually to remember another thing, that before you resume the workflow, you need to make the proper changes in Dataverse. Okay, if you have any questions, because I know that this demo might not be very, very easy to digest, and what I was showing could really look cool, but you might be really asking yourself, hey, how to do that on my own? Then if you have questions, please navigate to my contact page, like aka.ms/poshetech, and there you can find my email address or other social media links, and then just contact me and ask questions directly so that I could try and help you to maybe implement similar solutions at your companies. Plus, well, if you liked the video, if you felt inspired, and if you'd like to see more of such a content, then please subscribe to my channel and like the video. And, well, thank you for watching, and until the next time, goodbye.